Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John. I'm a weapon of mass instruction. Today is Tuesday, November 20th, 2012. It is about 2:15 in the afternoon. Sorry, it's been a while. Life kind of caught up. But I've been having this idea and I want to run with it. I'm going to go over the backstory, so to speak, of how I got to where I am thinking about this idea. So, lately, a lot of the time when I'm watching the news that I get on YouTube, when I'm watching the videos from all of y'all, when I'm looking at the Drudge Report, and when I'm looking at other news sources, I keep thinking to myself, okay, the shit is hitting the fan. You know, we got crazy shit going on in Gaza, all the aftermath of Sandy, all this, and a lot of people, like you and me, are kind of in a bind. We're getting ready for survival. We're trying to prep as much as we can. We're trying to figure out how are we going to step out of the system, because I hear that a lot. You know, like the greatest truth never told. And I think he's got some good ideas, but you know, he's talking about stacking silver. All right. That's good and all, except what ends up happening is if you go back to a physical currency, eventually somebody's going to take control in a centralized form, and they're gonna try to control that again. Just like that's how the gold got controlled. It was the Knights Templar is a good example of that. How they had it set up. All right, you know, I'm living in England and I got X amount of gold. I got, 10 ounces of gold. I want that to stay safe, but I'm going from England over to Jerusalem or over to France or wherever. I don't want to take all that gold with me because it's heavy, whatever. I don't have room for it, but I want to keep it. And I don't want it to get stolen from my house, and I don't want to get robbed while I'm on my way. So what do? They go to their local, Knights Templar outpost or whatever. They say, okay, look, here, I got 10 ounces of gold. They give it to them. They get written up basically a certification that says, okay, the bearer of this bond owns 10 ounces of gold. And the Knights Templar, they take whatever fee right off the bat, and the guy gets whatever's left when he gets to his destination. That was like the first big central banking system. So, I mean, you see it. I don't have any silver. I don't have any gold. For a while, I was thinking, okay, I'd like to get some, just in case. And you know what? Just in case, that's fine. I would still like to get some, because there's going to be, when the shit hits the fan, there's going to be people out there who are going to want to trade in silver and gold. But here's the thing, you can't eat silver, you can't eat gold, you can't make a band-aid out of it, you can't shoot it, unless you want to make silver bullets. So it's really, like, in the end, it only holds value because people give it value. Just like the fiat currency system. The dollar only holds value because people give it value. People say, okay, $1 is worth this much gold. All right. And then, of course, the price of the gold changes. So, as they print more dollars, it takes more dollars to equal an ounce of gold. As they print more dollars, it takes more dollars to equal an ounce of silver. So the whole system, gold, silver, dollars, petroleum, whatever unit of currency they're using, clamshells, is dictated by the central banks, because that's the game they're playing. So this idea that I had basically centered on how do we survive and how do we thrive without resorting to any sort of currency system. And like straight barter system, that's good, but it's still, that's why we ended up with currency in the first place, because eventually it gets to the point where, okay, I'm making 500 pounds of, tanned leather hides a week. 500 pounds worth of hides, that's a lot to carry to market. It gets to the point where, okay, well, I can't just trade all those because not everybody needs hides. Not everybody needs what I've got. Some people need it, others don't. And if I don't capitalize on that, then I'm not going to be able to thrive. But it's no matter how you cut it, any sort of trade system, any sort of system like that, it's going to run into the same problems. You're going to fall back into the game. So I was trying to figure out, how do we get away from that? Well, you think of stuff like, I'm going to park there. Communism. That grand system that works good on paper, but it always gets fucked up because of the corruption of human beings. Because what ends up happening is a central power always tries to enforce it on others. The root word of enforce is force. You're forcing people to take part in the system. And that's why, no matter what system it is, if it's being forced on people, it's not going to work. Eventually, it's going to crumble. Capitalism. You force it on people, eventually it's going to crumble. Communism. You force it on people, eventually it's going to crumble. Socialism. It all comes down to people corrupt it. So how do we come up with a system that's uncorruptible? Well, the cynic in me is saying, well, such a thing doesn't exist, so therefore you can only rely on yourself. But if I rely only on myself, there's things I'm going to need to survive that I can't do myself. And there's things that you need to survive that you can't do yourself. All right? My skill set is going to be awesome when the shit hits the fan. Knowing about guns and how to employ them. Defense-minded, I'll be handy in a pinch. But I don't know so much about hunting. I'd like to learn. I don't know so much about farming or gardening. I don't know so much about medicine. I know first aid, which is good, but I'm no surgeon. I'm no doctor. I'm not a hunter. Those are all examples of things that I'm going to need to survive, but I don't have. But if I'm going to step out of the system, if I'm going to cease to rely on somebody else's idea of value, then I'm going to need to find those skills. I'm going to need to find those goods in order to survive. So that's my train of thought when I was thinking about this. And then it hit me. I was thinking about what system exists to help people survive, to help people thrive, that does not really fall into any sort of system that could be corrupted. And what I came up with is the 12-step programs. Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, AA, like all those anonymous programs, they work for the people that need them. They keep going. And nobody makes any money off of it, except for like the coffee companies and the cookie companies, because they, any place you go to like that, they're going to have coffee or cookies or whatever. Maybe not an OA, but you get where I'm going with this. Like their programs all work and they continue to exist. And the reason why is because the people that get good stuff out of it, in turn, put good stuff back into it. So here's my idea. I guess we could call it Survivors Anonymous. I'm only kind of joking about that because it would really basically be the same principles on the setup, on how it exists. And basically, wherever you're at, find other survivors, other people that want to survive, other people that want to step out of the system, and get together. Put your heads together and say, okay, I have this skill set, you have that skill set, he has that skill set, she has that skill set, she has that skill set, and put it all together. You'd have to be willing to give into the group. All right, so the hunter in the group would have to be willing to share his food that he hunts. He'd have to be willing to share the hides that he's able to tan or whatever, The gardener would have to be willing to share his vegetables. For no expectation of anything in return other than mutual survival. And I think if we look at those programs and we model our groups of survivors off of that, then it will not only ensure mutual survival for all of us, but it will also grow to encompass more and more people and more groups of survivors and more people who want to share what they've got. Because sharing is caring. So that's my idea in a nutshell. I would like for this to actually get off of the ground. And I have a feeling part of what it's going to entail is a willingness on the part of the individual to give up creature comforts. Because if we're going to exist outside of the system, but physically, geographically within the boundaries of the system, then we would have to be willing to give up anything that would cause us to rely on the system, like cell phones, cable, internet, all that stuff. So that's what I'm thinking. I might end up at some point taking my phone off of the cell phone plan that I share with my ex, and only using it when I can find the free Wi-Fi that's on offer from places. And that way I could still stay connected to you all, but at the same time I don't have to rely on procuring monopoly money to pay these companies. And I think if we're able to do this, and the cool thing is, if you got a job, I think you'd be able to keep your job. You wouldn't have to give up your job or whatever. But when it comes to survival as the group, then we would be getting into the group stuff. You know what I mean? So we could actually, on a personal level, still partake in the system for as long as the system exists, but we've got our group of survivors. And you can also look at, I guarantee there's a militia in every state. Take a look at their organization. And again, it's all at will. You don't have to be in the militia. You don't have to be in any sort of, group therapy or 12-step program. But the people that do have a problem and go to that program to help them with their problem, they end up recovering from that problem. And it's a lifelong process. Because I have issues of my own that I need help with. And so that's kind of, going to a group where I get help with my issues. That's where I got this idea. Because I hear people there say stuff like, well, if everybody had this program, then everybody's problems would be solved. But again, it can't be enforced. That's what makes all those groups, that's what makes them thrive. The fact that it's not enforced, that it's all willing participation on the part of the individual. When they start to recover, then they're able to share more of what they've got for other people to help them recover from whatever their problem is. And we can model it the same way. We are a bunch. We're a bunch of people who our problem is we want to be able to survive and not fall into the system and become slaves again. Right? So if we can model it the same way, then the same thing should happen. We would be able to survive and help other people to survive, if that makes sense. I wanted to write it down and put it down on a blog and give the link out so that people could read it. But I think the thing is, this is a collaborative effort. So I'm going to go ahead and do that whenever I get a chance to. So it's out there. So if you're more of a reader than a listener, then you can still get the information there. But like I said, it's a collaborative effort. So it's not just me dictating how it should be to everybody else. It's everybody as a group coming up with the plan. As a group deciding, everything. Because that's how it works there too. As a group, they can decide, okay, well, there's no smoking there, so they're going to have a smoking station set up outside. As a group, they can decide, okay, we're going to what's a good example? Just look into it and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I think it's a really good idea. And I think if we work at it, we can get to the point where we're in self-sustaining groups. Well, where we're self-supporting. Where my skill set plus your skill set plus his skill set plus her skill set plus all of our goods that we use to survive put together ensures mutual survival. And that's the promise that all governments make. That's the promise that all governments fail to keep. Is survival for all those that partake in the government. And the reason why it doesn't work, in the end, all governments fail, every single one, is because it's being enforced. As a citizen of the United States, we are forced to take part in our system of government. We are forced to tithe. We're forced to put in our income tax, and if we don't, then the IRS comes to get you. So if it's being enforced in any sort of sense of the term, then it's not going to thrive in the long run. And we see our system crumbling because it's not really our system. It's somebody else's system that they're enforcing on us. So if we have a system all our own, that's all willing participation, to the point where, okay, let's say 3, 4, 5 years down the line, I decide, you know what, I don't need you guys to survive. I'm going to do it on my own. I step out of the group and the group goes on. And maybe I do on my own, or maybe I don't. But that's the freedom. That's actually, ironically enough, that's what keeps groups like A and NA and all that together, is the fact that any given day, anybody in that group could decide that they don't want it anymore, that they don't need it, and just take their chances on their own. But because of that freedom, most people do stay in it and do recover because it works for them. And if we model our organization off of that, so that nobody's making a profit off of anybody, and that's really how it works there. When you take the stance, follow the money simply goes where it's needed. And, it's everybody thrives from it. And it not only is existing, but is expanding day by day, I think that's it for today. I think that's going to be my new focus. I think that's what I'm going to do. And if I only end up with a group by me of people that are like-minded, that want to survive, and nowhere else, okay. If my group fails but somebody else's group thrives, okay. In the end, one thriving group of survivors is going to attract more. Like all of those different groups, all of those different programs, they have their sets, their steps, they have their traditions. And one of their traditions is it's based on attraction rather than promotion, which is why I'm not telling you guys what my specific problem is, because I'm not promoting any individual program. If we simply thrive, other people were going to see us surviving. So when the shit hits the fan and economy as we know it breaks down, people are eventually going to see, okay, wow, there's this little compound of people and they're all surviving, they're all happy. And they're not drinking happy juice. How do they do it? And it's going to attract people to the groups. And the more people in the group that are taking part in farming, hunting, defense, medicine, like basically all the things that exist in society can exist in a group of survivalists, as long as we're willing to share it. Okay? I think that's the key, sharing. Sharing what we've got to help other people survive. If everybody shares what they got to help other people survive, then everybody will survive, as long as they're willing to share. I think it's a good deal, because my individual problem is, it's going to be there no matter what. It's part of my system. It's part of my body, mind, and soul. And where I go for help helps me to recover from my problem. And I honestly do think that the framework exists if we take advantage of it. So, tell me what you think. I remember a while back somebody telling me about how, AA and all them, it's a bunch of cults, but it really isn't. If you do your homework, if you look into it, it really does exist, and it's all at will. Nobody's getting brainwashed. It's just laying out a system of behavior, or a system of thinking. And I can see where people would say, okay, yeah, you're getting brainwashed. But you know what? No. I'm still free to think whatever I want. But getting help with my thinking helps me to recover from my own problem. And if we take survival as that, as that recovery, then we can all help each other that way. So at this point, I think I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to cut it off here. But again, it's a group effort, it's a collaborative effort. All those programs didn't spring up just because one person said, here's my idea. It was always a group of people that got together and said, here's our problem, we all share it, how are we going to recover from it? And it works. Y'all stay safe. Peace.